The boardroom was dead silent. 50 executives, lawyers, and board members watched as the small, gray-haired woman they had ignored for 6 months slowly rose from her wheelchair. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were cold. Melanie's coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Madame Asha Juma buttoned her designer kente blazer slowly, one button at a time, like she had all the time in the world. Because she did. She owned every second in that room. "You had one job," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the silence like a blade through warm butter. "One job. To be human. And the only person in this entire company who passed—" She turned, and every head followed her gaze to the trembling young woman standing by the door, seeing clutching a small cardboard box of her belongings, eyes red from crying, "Was the girl you have been trying to destroy since Monday." Amaka Okeke did not move. She could not move. Her legs had stopped working the moment Madame Asha Juma stood up. Because that was not possible. That could not be possible. That was Madame Asha Juma, the quiet, gray-haired woman in the corner cubicle who always smelled like eucalyptus oil and called Amaka, my daughter, whenever she brought her a cup of tea. That was the woman Amaka had been pushing to the bathroom every afternoon for the past 3 months because the office janitor always seemed too busy. That was the woman whose scattered files Amaka had stayed back 2 hours on a Friday night to reorganize because nobody else would. That woman was standing in the middle of the boardroom in a gold and green kente blazer that probably cost more than Amaka's entire year's salary. That woman owned the building they were standing in. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Let us go back to where this story really started. Not in the boardroom, not in the office. It started on the worst morning of Amaka Okeke's life. And trust me, Amaka had seen some bad mornings. Very bad mornings. The kind of mornings that make you question every decision you have ever made, including the one where you thought waking up was a good idea. Amaka was 28 years old, and she was tired in the way that only a woman carrying too much for too long can be tired. Not sleepy tired. Soul tired. The kind of tired that sits behind your eyes and follows you into your dreams. She woke up that Monday morning at 5:15, not because her alarm went off, but because her phone was ringing. It was the hospital. Again. "Miss Okeke," the nurse said carefully, in that voice nurses use when they are about to say something that will rearrange your entire world. "Your mother had a difficult night. The oncologist would like to speak with you before noon, if possible." Amaka sat up in her small one-bedroom apartment in Lagos and pressed her hand flat against her chest like she was trying to hold something together from the inside. Ngozi Okeke, her mother, her best friend, the woman who had sold her gold earrings to pay for Amaka's university application, was in stage 3 breast cancer, and the treatment was not cheap. It was never cheap. Every month, Amaka looked at her bank account and felt the same cold dread settle in her stomach, like a stone dropped in still water. A very heavy stone, in very still water, at the bottom of a very deep problem. She got up. She showered. She made tea she did not drink. She had been making tea she did not drink every morning for 6 months, which meant somewhere in Lagos there was a tea company thriving entirely off Amaka's anxiety. She ironed her one good blazer, the navy one with the small fraying at the left cuff that she kept meaning to fix, and she told herself what she told herself every morning. One day at a time, one foot in front of the other. You are Ngozi Okeke's daughter. You do not fall apart. She called Chidi before she left the house. Chidi Ease was her boyfriend of 2 years, a tall, smooth-talking financial analyst who wore expensive cologne and always had an answer for everything, every question except the important ones. She needed to hear his voice. She needed him to say something that would make the stone in her stomach feel lighter. He picked up on the 4th ring. She could hear music in the background at 5:45 in the morning. "Hey," he said. He sounded distracted. "The hospital called. Amaka said. "Mum had a bad night." A pause. More music. "Okay. Okay?" Amaka pulled her blazer tighter even though she was inside. "Chidi, they want me to come in before noon. I might need to leave work early. I was thinking maybe you could—" "Amaka." His voice had that edge now, the one she had been noticing more and more lately, like she was an inconvenience he was learning to tolerate. "I have a big presentation today. I cannot be distracted right now." "I am not asking you to do anything. I just wanted to talk." "We will talk later." He hung up. Amaka looked at her phone for a long moment. She was not angry. She was not even surprised. She was just tired. She added it to the pile of things she was carrying and walked out the door, one foot in front of the other. The BRT bus was late. Of course it was. Because when life decides to humble you, it does a thorough job. Amaka stood at the bus stop in her good navy blazer, her carefully printed portfolio under her arm, watching 3 Danfo buses drive past without stopping, each one more aggressively unhelpful than the last. The third one actually slowed down, made eye contact with her through the window, and then accelerated. The conductor hanging off the side shrugged at her like a philosopher delivering a life lesson. She arrived at Crown Continental Group at 7:54, 4 minutes early, despite everything, because Amaka Okeke was that kind of woman. Crown Continental Group was one of the most powerful conglomerates in West Africa, 42 floors of glass and steel in the heart of Victoria Island, Lagos. Real estate, tech, energy, fashion. If money moved through Lagos, it moved through Crown Continental Group in some way or another. Amaka had worked there for 3 years as a senior administrative coordinator, which was a very long title for a job that meant she kept the entire 3rd floor running while people with bigger titles took the credit. She was good at her job. Quietly, efficiently, invisibly good. She had earned that position too. All 3 rounds of interviews, 2 written assessments, and a final presentation in front of a panel of 7 directors. She had beaten 12 other candidates, including one who had arrived in a chauffeured car and left her business card on every seat before the interview even started. The woman had also brought a color-coded binder, a laser pointer, and what appeared to be a personally branded water bottle. Amaka had arrived on the BRT bus with a printed portfolio and a prayer. She had gotten the job. The woman with the laser pointer had not. That woman was Melanie Mayo, and 3 years later Melanie had not forgotten a single detail of that morning. Not the binder, not the laser pointer, not the water bottle, and definitely not Amaka Okeke. Amaka stepped out of the elevator on the 3rd floor at exactly 7:58 and walked straight into chaos. Melanie was standing in the middle of the open office, holding a printed spreadsheet above her head like a weapon. She was the head of client relations. Beautiful, ambitious, and mean in the precise, calculated way that never left fingerprints. Everything about her was expensive and deliberate. The silk blouse, the pointed heels, the way she smiled at people she was already planning to destroy. She had wanted Amaka's position for 3 years, and she had spent every single one of those years making sure Amaka felt it. "There she is," Melanie said, her voice carrying across the entire floor like she had been waiting and had actually rehearsed this moment in front of a mirror. "The woman of the hour." Amaka stopped walking. Around her, colleagues were pretending to look at their screens while watching with their peripheral vision. She recognized that energy immediately. Something had already happened. Something had been set in motion before she even walked through the door. "Good morning, Melanie," Amaka said carefully. "Is it?" Melanie smiled. She had a beautiful smile. It never reached her eyes. It barely reached her cheeks. "Because I have been going through the Zenith account files, you know, the ones you were supposed to archive last Thursday, and it is very interesting, Amaka. Very, very interesting." She lowered the spreadsheet and tilted her head in that particular way that meant she had already won and wanted everyone to watch. "Would you like to explain to everyone here why 3 client payments totaling 450,000 naira are missing from the system?" The floor went quiet in that particular way where you can feel everyone holding their breath and mentally calculating how far they are from the exit. Amaka felt the stone in her stomach grow heavier. "That is not possible," she said. "I archived those files myself. The payments were all confirmed." "Were they?" Melanie placed the spreadsheet on the nearest desk and spun it around to face Amaka. "Because according to this, they were deleted, and according to the system log—" She paused for effect, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from her silk blouse. "They were deleted from your login. Your personal login. At 9:47 p.m. last Thursday." "I was at the hospital last Thursday at 9:47, Amaka said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. "My mother—" "Can anyone confirm that?" Melanie asked sweetly. Nobody spoke. Amaka looked around the room, at faces she had worked beside for 3 years, people she had covered for, stayed late for, brought birthday cake for, listened to complain about their marriages every Friday afternoon, and watched every single one of them look away. Every single one. Except for Tunde Adeyemi, the youngest member of the IT department, who opened his mouth, looked at Melanie, looked at his laptop, looked at Melanie again, and then, very slowly, very deliberately, put on his headphones and turned his screen brightness all the way up. A man choosing job security over justice in real time. Nobody could blame him. His rent was due, and except for one other person. In the far corner of the office, half hidden behind a tall filing cabinet, a small gray-haired woman in a wheelchair had stopped pretending to type. She was watching Amaka with dark, steady eyes. Not with pity, not with curiosity, with something that looked almost like recognition, like she had seen this exact moment before and had been waiting patiently for it to arrive. Amaka did not know her name yet. Madame Asha Juma had only started 2 weeks ago. She had been told the woman was a new junior data entry clerk, some kind of government disability employment initiative that HR had quietly grumbled about. Melanie had grumbled loudest. "I do not understand," she had said to Mr. Balogan on the woman's first day, loudly enough for half the floor to hear, "why we are filling a data entry position with someone who can barely reach the keyboard." She had then laughed at her own joke. Nobody else had. Their eyes met for just a second, Amaka's and Madame Asha Juma's, before Amaka looked away. She had bigger problems right now. "I want to speak to HR," Amaka said quietly. "And I want to speak to them now." Melanie's smile widened into something triumphant and ugly. "Oh, don't worry," she said, smoothing her silk blouse with one perfectly manicured hand. "They are already expecting you." Behind her, 2 colleagues exchanged a glance. One of them, a quiet woman named Sadie, who sat 3 desks from Amaka and had borrowed her umbrella 17 times without once returning it, leaned slightly toward the other and whispered just loud enough, "She has never gotten over losing that promotion. Never. So 3 years, and she is still doing this." The other colleague said nothing. They just looked at their screen and turned their brightness up too. Amaka heard it. She did not react. She picked up her bag, straightened her navy blazer, the one with the small fraying at the left cuff, and walked toward the HR elevator with her head high and her heart doing something complicated and loud inside her chest. She did not see Madame Asha Juma watching her go with those quiet, burning eyes. She did not see the old woman reach slowly into the pocket of her plain data clerk uniform and take out a sleek, expensive phone, nothing like the battered Nokia sitting on her desk, and type a single unhurried message. And she did not see the reply that came back in seconds, or from a contact saved simply as Ade. "Is it her?" Madame Asha Juma looked at the elevator doors closing behind Amaka. She looked at the way the girl had walked, spine straight, chin up, the particular dignity of a woman who refuses to let anyone see her breaking. She typed back slowly, with the small, satisfied smile of a woman whose instincts had never once failed her in 63 years. "Come and see for yourself. You are not ready for what happens next. Subscribe and hit the bell." The HR office was on the 7th floor, and it smelled like printer ink and quiet cruelty. Amaka sat in the chair across from Mr. Balogan, the head of human resources, a round, sweaty man who had the energy of someone who had never once in his life done the right thing when the wrong thing was more convenient. He had a small Nigerian flag on his desk, a motivational poster on his wall that said, "Together we rise," and absolutely no intention of letting anyone rise anywhere near him. He was Melanie's ally. Everyone on the third floor knew it. Nobody said it out loud. Beside him sat Melanie, legs crossed, notebook open, pen clicking. She had the focused energy of a woman who had been planning this moment for 3 years and was determined to enjoy every second of it. She had even worn her best silk blouse for the occasion. Amaka noticed this and filed it away. "Amaka," Mr. Balogan began, lacing his fingers together on the desk like he was about to deliver a sermon. "You understand that this is a very serious allegation." "I understand that someone deleted those files using my login," Amaka said, "which means someone had access to my credentials, which means this is not an allegation against me. It is evidence of a security breach." Mr. Balogan blinked. He had not expected that. Melanie's pen stopped clicking. "We will, of course, investigate all possibilities," he said carefully, in the tone of a man who had no intention of investigating anything. "I would like that in writing," Amaka said. Another blink, slower this time. "I beg your pardon? I would like a written confirmation that a full investigation will be conducted, including an audit of all system access logs for the past 30 days, not just my login activity." She looked at him steadily. "I have worked in this company for 3 years. I have never had a single disciplinary note. I was at Lagos Island Hospital on Thursday night, visiting my mother who is receiving chemotherapy treatment. The hospital has records. The nurses have records. I have records." She placed her phone on the desk. On the screen was a timestamp photograph of her and her mother in the hospital ward, taken at 9:22 p.m. that same Thursday. "So before anyone in this room uses the word termination, I suggest we all take a very careful breath." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with the pen Melanie had stopped clicking. Mr. Balogan looked at the photograph. He looked at Melanie. Melanie looked at the photograph. She looked at Mr. Balogan. They had the silent conversation of two people who had not prepared for this particular development and were now improvising badly. Melanie recovered first. She leaned forward slightly, tilting her head with the practiced sympathy of a woman who had none. "That photograph could have been taken any Thursday," she said smoothly. "The metadata will confirm the date and time," Amaka replied without missing a beat. "Shall I forward it to the IT department, or would you prefer to do it yourself?" Mr. Balogan loosened his collar. The motivational poster behind him suddenly felt like a personal accusation. We will place you on administrative suspension while the investigation is conducted," he said, the words coming out slightly faster than he intended. "Paid suspension. You will have full access to submit any evidence you feel is relevant." It was not a victory. Amaka knew that. A suspension, even a paid one, was still a mark, still a weapon Melanie could sharpen and use later. But it was better than termination, and it bought her time. She stood up, picked up her phone, and walked out of the office with her spine straight and her face completely composed. She made it to the bathroom on the 6th floor before her legs gave out. She sat on the closed toilet lid and pressed both hands over her mouth and shook. Not crying, just shaking, the way a building shakes in a storm before it decides whether to stand or fall. Her mother was sick. Her boyfriend had hung up on her this morning. Her job was hanging by a thread, being held by a man who was already looking for scissors. She was 28 years old, and she was so tired she could feel it in her teeth. She sat in that bathroom stall for exactly 4 minutes. She knew it was 4 minutes because she counted. Counting was the only thing that felt manageable right now. Then she washed her face, reapplied her lip gloss, because Amaka Okeke had not raised a woman who crumbled in office bathrooms, and walked back to the 3rd floor to collect her bag. But before we get to what happened in that corridor, We need to go back 2 weeks. Because Madame Asha Juma's interest in Amaka Okeke did not begin that Monday morning. It began on her very first day at Crown Continental Group in the most ordinary way possible, over a plate of jollof rice. Madame Asha Juma had arrived on the 3rd floor on a Tuesday morning, wheeled in by a young HR intern who looked deeply uncomfortable about the whole situation and left her at her corner cubicle with the speed of a man completing a mission he had not volunteered for. The desk was small. The corner was far from the window. The view was a filing cabinet. Nobody came to introduce themselves. Nobody brought her a welcome card or offered to show her around. Melanie had looked over from her glass-walled office, assessed her in approximately 3 seconds, and returned to her phone call. By 12:30, the 3rd floor had emptied out for lunch. The cafeteria was on the ground floor, and it had a long ramp on the far end that was, in theory, wheelchair accessible. In practice, the ramp had a loose bolt that made it vibrate alarmingly, and the door at the top required a key card that nobody had thought to give Madame Asha Juma. She had discovered this the hard way, alone at the bottom of the ramp, key cardless, listening to the sound of her colleagues laughing over rice on the other side of the door. She had wheeled herself back upstairs without a word. She ate the small biscuits she kept in her desk drawer and drank water from a bottle and did not complain to anyone because complaining was not something she had ever found particularly useful. That was when Amaka appeared. She came through the office door with 2 plates balanced carefully in both hands. Jollof rice, fried plantain, a piece of chicken, the full cafeteria lunch, wrapped in foil to keep it warm. She walked directly to the corner cubicle and set 1 plate on the desk in front of Madame Asha Juma without ceremony or preamble. The ramp key card, Amaka said, pulling her own chair over and sitting down with her 2nd plate, is kept by Mr. Fashola in facilities. He keeps forgetting to make copies. I have been complaining about it for 8 months. She opened her own plate. Until they fix it, I will bring lunch. I come back from the cafeteria this way anyway. Madame Asha Juma looked at the plate. She looked at Amaka, who was already eating and scrolling through something on her phone with the matter-of-fact energy of a woman doing a perfectly normal thing that required no acknowledgement or applause. You do not know me, Madame Asha Juma said. I know you have been sitting in that corner since morning without talking to a single person, Amaka said, without looking up from her phone. That is enough. Madame Asha Juma was quiet for a moment. Then she picked up her fork. The chicken looks good, she said. It is, Amaka said. Do not tell anyone I always take the biggest piece. I have a reputation to protect. Madame Asha Juma laughed. It was the first time she had laughed on the 3rd floor of Crown Continental Group. It would not be the last. From that Tuesday, Amaka brought 2 lunches every day without being asked. She never made it to production. She never mentioned it in front of colleagues. She just came back from the cafeteria with 2 plates, set 1 down, sat in the extra chair, and ate her lunch like it was the most natural arrangement in the world. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they ate in comfortable silence. Madame Asha Juma, who had spent 63 years learning to read people the way other women read books, read Amaka carefully over those 2 weeks. She read her patience, her humor, her quiet stubbornness, the way she never complained about the things that were clearly exhausting her, the way she fought for other people's small dignities without ever drawing attention to it, like the bathroom situation. The accessible bathroom on the 3rd floor was technically available, but practically useless. The key was kept at the main reception desk on the ground floor, which meant every time Madame Asha Juma needed to use it, she had to call reception, wait for someone to bring the key up, and do all of this with the particular indignity of having to announce her needs to an audience of colleagues pretending not to listen. She had used it twice and then quietly decided she would simply manage with less water during office hours, which was not a solution, but was better than the alternative. Amaka had noticed on the 3rd day. She had not said anything to Madame Asha Juma about it. She had simply walked into Mr. Balogun's office that afternoon with a printed copy of the company's disability accommodation policy, a highlighted section of the Lagos State Physical Accessibility Regulations, and a very calm, very detailed, very documented explanation of exactly how the current bathroom key arrangement constituted a compliance violation that could expose Crown Continental Group to a formal complaint. Mr. Balogun had sweated through his shirt within 4 minutes. By the end of that week, a dedicated bathroom key had been mounted on a hook directly beside Madame Asha Juma's cubicle. Nobody made an announcement about it. It simply appeared. Madame Asha Juma had looked at it for a long moment when she arrived that Friday morning. Then she had looked across the office at Amaka, who was on the phone and not looking at her, and she had felt something settle quietly in her chest, like a decision that had already been made. The third moment happened on a Friday evening, 3 days before the Monday everything fell apart. Melanie's team had done a floor reorganization that afternoon, officially a routine filing reshuffle, and unofficially a targeted operation that had left Madame Asha Juma's work files in 4 different cabinets across the floor with no logical order and no documentation of where anything had been moved. It was the kind of cruelty that looks like incompetence from a distance. Melanie was very good at that kind of cruelty. By 5:30, everyone had gone home. The third floor was empty and quiet, the kind of quiet that only large offices get after hours, full of humming computers and cooling air conditioning and the particular loneliness of spaces designed for crowds. Madame Asha Juma was still at her desk, methodically working through the chaos, refusing to leave until she had at least created a list of what was missing. Amaka appeared at 6:15 with 2 cups of tea. "You are still here," Madame Asha Juma said. "So are you," Amaka said, handing her a cup and sitting down. She looked at the scattered files across 4 different cabinets. She looked at Melanie's glass-walled office, dark and locked. She said nothing about what she understood. She just picked up the nearest stack of files and started organizing. They worked together for 2 hours. Amaka sorted and labeled. Madame Asha Juma directed from her wheelchair, her memory for detail precise and unhurried. At some point, the work became conversation. Not about the office, not about the files, but the kind of conversation that happens between people who have quietly decided to trust each other. Amaka talked about her mother. Not the clinical details, not the stage 3 diagnosis or the treatment costs, just Ngozi herself. The crossword puzzles, the gold earrings she had sold, the way she called Amaka every Sunday morning to read her the weather forecast for a city she never planned to visit just because she liked the sound of Amaka's voice on the phone. Madame Asha Juma listened with the full, unhurried attention of someone who understood exactly what it meant to love a person, that specifically. "She sounds extraordinary," she said. "She is," Amaka said simply. "She is the reason I do not give up on things." Madame Asha Juma looked at her for a long moment. Outside the window, Lagos was doing what Lagos does at night, loud and bright and completely indifferent to the small, important things happening inside its buildings. "What about you?" she asked quietly. "Who is the reason you do not give up on yourself?" Amaka opened her mouth, closed it, looked at the file in her hands. I am still working on that one," she said finally, with a small, honest smile. Madame Asha Juma nodded slowly, like that was exactly the right answer, like she had been waiting for it. They finished the files at 8:15. Amaka packed up her bag, helped Madame Asha Juma with her coat, and walked with her to the elevator. At the ground floor, they went in different directions, Amaka to the BRT bus stop, Madame Asha Juma to a blacked-out car waiting at the private entrance around the corner that Amaka never saw because she was already walking the other way. It was only after the car door closed and her driver pulled smoothly into Lagos traffic that Madame Asha Juma allowed herself to sit back against the leather seat and close her eyes. Her gray wig was slightly crooked from the long evening. Her hands, freed from the wheelchair armrests, rested open in her lap. She thought about a girl who brought 2 lunches without being asked, who documented bathroom policies at 4 in the afternoon because someone needed a key on a hook, who stayed until 8:15 on a Friday night reorganizing files that were not hers and talked about her mother like she was describing something sacred. She took out her phone. She typed a message to Aide. "I think I found her." His reply came before the car had gone 2 blocks. "Found who?" She smiled. "Come to the office on Monday. You will understand when you see her." Now we go back to that Monday corridor, the scattered handbag, the photograph on the floor. Madame Asha Juma was outside the elevator with her wheelchair angled awkwardly against the wall, her large brown handbag upended on the floor. Files, pens, a small purse, a folded handkerchief, a photograph, everything scattered across the corridor tiles. People were walking past. One man in a blue suit actually stepped over a scattered file without breaking his stride, without looking down, without any visible awareness that he had the manners of a highway pothole. A woman from accounting glanced down, assessed the situation in approximately 1 second, decided it was not her problem, and kept walking. Amaka stopped. She looked at her watch. She looked at the elevator. She looked at Madame Asha Juma on the floor, trying to reach a pen that had rolled just beyond her fingertips, her jaw tight with the particular dignity of someone who refuses to ask for help, but desperately needs it. Amaka put her bag down and knelt on the corridor floor in her good navy blazer, the one with the fraying cuff, the only good blazer she owned. She knelt on the corridor floor without hesitating for even half a second. "Let me help you," she said. Madame Asha Juma looked at her, those dark, steady eyes. Up close they were even more striking, sharp and warm at the same time, like embers that had been burning for a very long time and had learned to be patient about it. "You have your own troubles today, my daughter," she said quietly. "Everybody has troubles," Amaka said, already gathering the files. "That does not mean we stop helping each other." She collected everything carefully, the pens, the purse, the silk handkerchief with the embroidered initials she still did not look at closely enough. She paused when she picked up the photograph. The young man with the quiet, serious face, the left side dimple. The game reserve in Ghana. She placed it gently on top of the files without comment. "Thank you," Madame Asha Juma said. "What is your name, my daughter?" "Amaka Okeke." The old woman nodded. "I am Asha," she said. "Data entry, corner cubicle, fire hazard near the main corridor." Amaka laughed. "I have to go," she said, standing up. "But you know where my desk is." "The one with the cactus," Madame Asha Juma said. "Cacti survive everything," Amaka said, echoing the old woman's own words back to her without realizing it. Madame Asha Juma watched her go. She watched the elevator doors close. Then she took out her expensive phone and typed to Ade. "Is it her?" She already knew his answer before he gave it. She had known it since that Friday evening when a girl with a fraying blazer stayed until 8:15 reorganizing files that were not hers and said she was still working on being her own reason not to give up. "Come and see for yourself," she typed back. And then she smiled the smile of a woman who had been right about people for 63 years and had absolutely no intention of stopping now. Amaka got to the hospital at 12:30. Dr. Mensah was a tall, careful man who delivered bad news the way good doctors do, gently but without softening the edges so much that you miss the point. He had kind eyes and terrible timing, and he always offered water before he spoke, which Amaka had learned meant whatever came next required hydration. He offered water. Amaka took it. "The current treatment cycle is not responding the way we hoped," he said. "We want to move Ngozi to a more aggressive protocol. It has a significantly higher success rate, but—" He paused, and in that pause lived approximately 47 different fears. "It is considerably more expensive. We are looking at an additional 350,000 naira per month for the next 4 months. Amaka did the math in her head immediately. She did it twice because the first answer could not be right. It was right. She felt the floor shift slightly beneath her feet. Not dramatically, just that quiet internal lurch of a person, realizing the mountain just got taller. "I will figure it out," she said. "Doctor." Mensah nodded with the quiet respect of a man who had heard those 4 words many times in this office and knew exactly what they cost the person saying them. She went in to see Ngozi after. Ngozi Okeke was 54 years old and had the kind of beauty that illness makes more visible rather than less. High cheekbones, warm brown skin, eyes exactly like Amaka's. The same particular set to the jaw that meant neither of them backed down from anything without a fight. She was sitting up in bed trying to do a crossword puzzle and losing badly. She had been on the same clue for 20 minutes. The pen had bite marks on it. 7 letters, she said the moment Amaka walked in without looking up. Means to endure with patience. Second letter is B. "Abiding," Amaka said, sitting on the edge of the bed and taking her mother's hand. Ngozi looked up. She looked at her daughter's face with the precision of a woman who had been reading that face for 28 years and had memorized every chapter. "What happened?" "Nothing. Work stuff." "Amaka Okeke." Amaka exhaled slowly. "Someone is trying to frame me for something I did not do. I am on suspension, but I have evidence and I am going to fight it." Ngozi was quiet for a moment, turning the pen over in her fingers. Then, "And Chidi?" Amaka looked at the crossword puzzle. "He was busy this morning." Her mother said nothing. She just squeezed Amaka's hand in the particular way that meant she had opinions she was choosing not to share yet, but was absolutely filing away for later. "Tell me something good," Amaka said quietly. Ngozi thought about it. "The nurse on the night shift brought me jollof rice yesterday. From home, in a flask." She paused. "It had dodo in it. Was it good?" "It was the best thing I have eaten in 3 weeks." She looked at Amaka sideways. "Do not tell the hospital nutritionist." Amaka laughed. A real one, the kind that surprised her by arriving when she least expected it, warm and sudden like sunlight through a window you forgot you had. She stayed with her mother for 2 hours after that. She laughed at Ngozi's terrible crossword guesses. The woman put cabbage for a 5-letter word meaning musical note and defended it with full confidence. She braided her mother's hair the way she used to when she was small, sitting behind her on the hospital bed, both of them pretending this was just an ordinary afternoon and not a battlefield in disguise. She did not cry once. She cried in the taxi on the way home. Quietly, with her face turned toward the window so the driver would not see. The driver saw. He turned the radio up respectfully and said nothing, which was the kindest thing anyone had done for Amaka all day. She found out about Chidi at 11:15 that night. She had not planned to look. She was not that kind of woman. She did not go through phones, did not read messages, did not snoop through laptops left open on kitchen counters. Except Chidi had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter when he came to drop off some of her things. He had been keeping at his place, and the screen had not gone to sleep yet, and the message thread was right there, full screen. Impossible to miss even if she had tried. The name at the top of the thread was Zuri Mayo. Amaka stood in her kitchen for a very long time reading things she could not unread. 3 months of messages. Zuri Mayo, who was Melanie's younger cousin, who had come to the last company party in a red dress and shaken Amaka's hand and said so lovely to finally meet you with a smile that Amaka now understood completely and entirely. 3 months, while her mother was in chemotherapy, while Amaka was working double shifts to cover hospital bills, while she was ironing her one good blazer every morning and telling herself one foot in front of the other. She closed the laptop carefully. She did not slam it. She was proud of herself for not slamming it. She sat down on her kitchen floor, not dramatically, not in tears, just because her legs decided they were done for the evening and the floor seemed like a reasonable place to process information. She sat there in the quiet of her small apartment. The refrigerator humming its indifferent hum, the city outside doing what cities do, completely unmoved by the fact that Amaka Okeke's life was currently in several pieces around her on the tiles. After a while she started laughing. Not the good kind, the kind that lives right next to crying and sometimes gets confused about which door to use. Melanie's cousin. Of all the people, of all the possible women in Lagos, a city of 20 million people, Chidi had chosen Melanie Mayo's cousin. The universe, Amaka decided, had a very specific and personal sense of humor. Then her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Miss Okeke, this is Aisha, from the office. I hope I am not disturbing you. I wanted to check that you arrived home safely today. You seemed like you were carrying a lot." Amaka stared at the message for a long moment. She was sitting on a kitchen floor at 11:15 at night next to a closed laptop full of information she wished she could return. She had absolutely nothing left to lose. She typed back, "I am fine. Thank you for checking. How did you get my number?" "HR directory. I am old, not incompetent." Amaka burst out laughing, a real laugh this time, full and sudden and slightly unhinged in the way that only people sitting on kitchen floors at midnight can laugh. She laughed until her eyes watered, and then she wiped her eyes and typed back, "Good night, Asha." The reply came immediately. "Good night, my daughter. Tomorrow will be different. I promise you." Amaka did not know why those 8 words from a near stranger in a wheelchair made her feel safer than anything Chidi had said to her in 3 months. She did not analyze it. She just pulled herself off the kitchen floor, put the kettle on, made tea she would definitely not drink, and went to bed. She did not know that at that exact moment, in a penthouse apartment on the 42nd floor of the very building she worked in, Madame Asha Juma, not in a wheelchair, not in her grey wig, but in a silk robe with a glass of red wine, and her real hair loose around her shoulders, every inch of her the woman she actually was showing that photograph from her handbag to her son. Her son, who was sitting across from her in the living room with his long legs stretched out, his jacket off, looking at the photograph with an expression his mother had not seen on his face in a very long time, not since before the thing that had happened 2 years ago that they did not talk about at dinner, not since before Zuri. "Tell me about her," Ade Juma said quietly. Madame Asha Juma smiled into her wine glass. She took a slow, satisfied sip. Outside, Lagos sparkled 42 floors below them, indifferent and magnificent, and full of stories happening in 1,000 small apartments, including one where a girl was making tea she would not drink and trying to believe that tomorrow would be different. "I thought you would never ask," she said. "If this story is touching something in you, subscribe. Someone out there needs to see this too." Amaka woke up on Tuesday morning with 3 things she had not had the night before. A clear head, a plan, and absolutely 0 messages from Chidi that she intended to respond to. His "we need to talk" was still sitting on her phone screen like a small, predictable confession. She looked at it while the kettle boiled. She thought about the open laptop on her kitchen counter. She thought about 3 months of messages and a red dress at a company party, and so lovely to finally meet you. She thought about her mother's hand against her cheek. You are allowed to accept help sometimes. It is not weakness. It is just being human. She put her phone face down on the counter. Not yet. Chidi would wait. She had learned in 28 years that some fires needed to be put out in a specific order. You handle the one burning your house down before you deal with the one smoldering in the yard. Right now, her job was the house. Chidi was the yard. She made tea she did not drink. She opened her laptop, and she went to work. She started with the hospital records. She had the photograph from Thursday night, but she wanted more. She called Lagos Island Hospital at 7 in the morning and spoke to the ward nurse who had been on duty, a woman named Nurse Patricia who remembered Amaka clearly because Amaka always brought biscuits for the night staff and had once helped her fix the ward printer at 11 p.m. without being asked. Nurse Patricia confirmed the visit in writing, with entry and exit timestamps sent to Amaka's email within the hour. Then she worked backward through every action she had taken on the Zenith account files over the past 3 months, every email, every system confirmation, every colleague she had copied. She had 17 separate pieces of documentation confirming the files had been correctly archived before she left the office on Thursday. 17. She printed them all, organized them chronologically, and put them in a folder with her name on the front in clear, professional letters. Then she started looking at the ghost account. She did not have administrator-level system access. She could not see the back-end logs, but she was smart enough to know what she was looking for and patient enough to look carefully. She spent 4 hours going through every email notification, every system alert, and every automated message that had been generated around the time of the deletion, and in a routine system notification email that had been sent to her inbox and ignored because she received 40 of them a day, she found something. A login alert, generated at 9:44 p.m. on Thursday, 3 minutes before the deletion. From a device she did not recognize, with an IP address that resolved, after 30 minutes of careful research, to a terminal inside Crown Continental Group. Floor 7, HR Department. Amaka sat back in her chair and looked at the screen for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and called Tunde Adeyemi. He picked up on the second ring. She could hear him swallow. "I found the login alert," she said. "Floor 7, HR Terminal, 9:44 p.m. Thursday." A long silence. "How did you—" "System notification email," she said. "The one everyone ignores." Another silence. "Amaka," his voice was low, "be careful. Whoever set this up had administrator access. That is not a junior employee. That is someone with serious internal authority." "I know," she said. "If you go to the board with this—" "I am not going to the board," she said. "I am going to Mr. Balogun." The silence that followed was so long, she checked the phone to make sure the call had not dropped. "Amaka," Tunde said carefully, "Mr. Balogun is the one with administrator access." "I know," she said again. "So you are going to walk into the office of the man who framed you and confront him with evidence that he framed you?" "Yes." "On your own?" "Yes. While you are on suspension." "The cafe on the ground floor is technically a separate business operating under a shared lease. I have been there since yesterday morning. Nobody has stopped me." A very long pause. "You are either the bravest person I know," Tunde said, "or the most—" "Tunde." "Yes? Can you get me the full back-end system logs? The ones that show the shadow account creation?" She heard him exhale. She heard the particular sound of a man choosing between his mortgage and his conscience, and arriving, after considerable internal debate, on the side of his conscience. "Give me until tomorrow morning," he said quietly. "And Amaka, if anyone asks, oh, I never spoke to you." "Spoke to who?" she said. She heard him laugh nervously as she hung up. She dealt with Chidi on Wednesday evening. She had chosen Wednesday deliberately. Not Monday when she was still raw, not Tuesday when she was too busy building her case to have the emotional bandwidth. Wednesday when she had done enough work to feel like herself again, when the ground under her feet felt solid enough to have a conversation that needed to happen standing up. She called him, not a message, a call. Chidi preferred messages because messages could be managed and edited and delayed. Amaka had learned this about him in 2 years and was using it against him now. He picked up on the third ring. "Amaka, I said we need to—" "I saw the laptop," she said. Complete silence. 3 months, she said. Not loudly, not with tears. Just clearly, the way you state a fact that does not require emotional decoration because it is terrible enough on its own. While my mother was in chemotherapy, while I was covering her bills. 3 months, Chidi. "Amaka, I am not calling to fight," she said. "I am calling to end it. Cleanly. Without a long conversation that is really just you explaining yourself in different ways until I agree to feel sorry for you." She paused. "Do you have anything of mine that I need back?" A long silence. "Amaka, can we just— Do you have anything of mine? Your gray cardigan. The one you left at— Keep it," she said. "Goodbye, Chidi." She hung up. She stood in her kitchen for a moment, waiting for the wave of grief that she expected to arrive. It did not arrive. What arrived instead was something quieter and more surprising, a feeling not entirely unlike relief. Like a bag she had been carrying for 3 months had been set down on the floor, and she had not realized how heavy it was until she was no longer holding it. She made tea. She drank it. It was the first cup of tea she had finished in 6 months, and it tasted, she decided, like a woman who had finally started making decisions in her own interest. She did not cry about Chidi that night. She cried a little the next morning, briefly, in the shower, which was where she preferred to handle things that needed to be handled privately. Then she washed her face and ironed her navy blazer and went back to work. Soon Tunde sent the files at 6:47 Thursday morning with a message that said simply, "I was never here." Amaka opened them at the cafe table with her actual tea and her printed evidence folder and her hospital records and her 17 archived confirmations. She read through the back-end logs carefully. The shadow account had been created 6 weeks ago from the 7th floor HR terminal during office hours. Not late at night, not hidden, but casually, in the middle of a working day, by someone who was confident enough in their own authority to not bother being careful. The account had been used exactly once. Thursday night, 9:44 p.m., remote access from an external device. She had everything she needed. She organized it into a second folder. Clean, labeled, devastating. Then she went upstairs. She was not supposed to be on the 7th floor. She walked into the HR department at 9:15 with 2 folders under her arm and the particular expression of a woman who had decided that the rules of a situation she did not create no longer applied to her. Mr. Balogun's assistant Blessing looked up from her desk with wide eyes. "Amaka, you are not supposed to—" "Is he in?" Amaka said. Blessing looked at the closed office door, looked at Amaka, looked at the 2 folders, made the calculation of a woman who recognized the energy of someone who was going to walk through that door regardless. "He is on a call," she said carefully. "I will wait," Amaka said, sitting down in the chair outside his office with the composed patience of a woman who had nothing but time and evidence. She waited 4 minutes. Then Mr. Balogun's door opened and he appeared, phone in hand, and stopped dead when he saw her. He recovered quickly. "Amaka," he said smoothly, "you should not be here. You are on suspension." "Sit down, Mr. Balogun," Amaka said pleasantly. Something in her voice made him sit. Not in his office, in the waiting chair across from her, like a man who had forgotten which one of them was supposed to be in charge of this conversation. Amaka opened the first folder and placed it on the small table between them. "Nurse Patricia Adeyinka, Lagos Island Hospital, Ward 7 night shift," she said. "Written confirmation of my presence at the hospital on Thursday from 7:15 p.m. to 10:40 p.m. Entry and exit timestamps. Signed and dated." She turned a page. 17 separate documented confirmations of the Zenith account files being correctly archived before I left the office Thursday afternoon. She turned another page. A system login alert generated at 9:44 p.m. Thursday from a device I do not own, resolving to an IP address on the 7th floor of this building. She looked at him. The HR department floor. Mr. Balogun had gone very still. He loosened his collar. He was sweating in a way the air conditioning could not explain. "I am going to open the second folder now," she said. "It contains the full back-end system logs showing when the shadow account was created, from which terminal, and during which hours." She placed her hand flat on the second folder but did not open it. "Before I open it, I want to give you one opportunity to do the right thing." Mr. Balogun looked at the folders. He looked at Amaka. He looked at Blessing, who had found something very important to do at the far end of the office. He looked like a man doing very rapid calculations about risk and consequence and finding none of the answers satisfactory. "What do you want?" he said quietly. "I want my full reinstatement," Amaka said. "All allegations cleared. A documented fraud report accurately identifying the source of the security breach, and I want it done before next Friday." A pause. "I will. Look into it," he said finally, in the tone of a man buying time with words he does not intend to honor. Amaka looked at him steadily for a long moment. She could see exactly what he was doing. She had always been able to see exactly what people were doing. It was both her greatest professional asset and the thing that made certain kinds of disappointment unavoidable. She stood up and picked up both folders. "Until Friday, Mr. Balogun," she said simply. She walked out without looking back. In the elevator going down, she pressed her back against the wall and gave herself exactly 30 seconds to shake. Not from fear, from adrenaline. The physical aftermath of doing something terrifying while appearing completely calm. 30 seconds. Then the doors opened and she walked out into the lobby. She almost walked directly into him. He came around the corner from the private elevator bank at exactly the moment she stepped out of the main elevator, and they nearly collided in the marble lobby with the specific comedy of two people moving too fast in opposite directions. She caught herself on the edge of the elevator door. He stepped back and his coffee tilted dangerously, but did not spill. They looked at each other. Up close he was. She noticed this in spite of herself, in spite of everything, in spite of having absolutely no available emotional bandwidth for this particular observation, even more unsettling than he had been through a glass partition on Monday. He had dark, direct eyes that did not look away when they found something worth looking at. The left side dimple was not visible because he was not smiling. He was looking at her with an expression she could not immediately categorize. Not surprise, exactly, more like the expression of someone who has been thinking about a specific thing and has just unexpectedly encountered it in 3 dimensions. She noticed also that he was absurdly well put together for 9:15 on a Thursday morning. The dark suit, the one open collar button, the specific quality of a man who dressed carefully without appearing to have thought about it. She filed this observation immediately in a drawer she was keeping for things she was not thinking about. The drawer was getting full. "I am sorry," Amaka said, stepping to the right. He stepped to the right at the same moment. She stepped to the left. He stepped to the left. They did the brief, absurd dance of two people trying to get out of each other's way and succeeding only in getting further into it. "I am sorry," he said. His voice was low and careful and slightly amused despite the neutral expression. "No, I left," she said, pointing. "Right," he said, stepping right. "No, I meant I am going left." "I thought you meant my left." They both stopped moving entirely and stood in the Crown Continental Group lobby, looking at each other. 3 seconds of complete stillness. Then Amaka said, "I am going to stand completely still and you are going to walk around me." Something shifted in his expression. The left side dimple appeared briefly, just for a second. "That seems fair," he said. He walked around her. Oh, she stood completely still and looked straight ahead, and was extremely professional about the fact that he smelled like good coffee and something quieter underneath it that she refused to identify. He was 2 steps past her when he stopped and turned back. "Are you all right?" he said. She looked at him. It was a strange question from a stranger in a lobby. She considered giving the automatic answer, the "I am fine" that she gave everyone, the answer that required no follow-up and cost nothing. She looked at his face. He was not asking automatically. He was asking because he wanted to know. She thought about the HR floor. She thought about Mr. Balogun's sweating collar. She thought about the second folder sitting under her arm right now like 48 hours of work made of paper. "I am having a very complicated week," she said. He looked at her for a moment. Something moved through his expression. Not pity, not sympathy, something more direct than both of those things. "I know," he said quietly. She frowned. "How would you?" But his phone was ringing, and he looked at the screen, and something shifted back to professional in his expression. "Excuse me," he said. He picked up the call, turned away, and walked toward the private entrance with the focused stride of a man returning to a different world. Amaka stood in the lobby watching him go. She looked at the set of his shoulders, at the way he walked like someone carrying something heavy and had learned to carry it without showing it. "How would you know?" she thought. "Who are you?" She turned and walked to the cafe. She sat down at her table. She opened her laptop. Or she told herself very firmly that she was a woman on suspension with 2 evidence folders and a hospital bill the size of a small car, and she had absolutely no business thinking about a man she had spoken to for approximately 90 seconds in a marble lobby. She had thought about him 3 times before her laptop finished loading. She closed the drawer firmly. She went back to work. She did not see Melanie. Melanie had been coming out of the security office on the far side of the lobby when it happened. She had seen the almost collision. She had seen the lobby dance. She had seen Ade Juma stop and turn back and ask a question that made him look at Amaka Okeke. Amaka Okeke on suspension, with her 2 folders and her fraying blazer, with an expression that Melanie had spent 14 months trying to earn and had never once received. She stood very still on the far side of the lobby. She had planned everything perfectly. 3 years of careful, patient, strategic work, the shadow account, the Thursday timing, the HR terminal, every detail executed without fingerprints. And he had stopped in the middle of the lobby to ask if she was all right. Something shifted in Melanie in that moment. Something that had been cold and calculated for 3 years became hot and personal and considerably less careful. She walked back to the 3rd floor and closed herself in her glass-walled office and called Mr. Balogun. He picked up immediately. He sounded shaken. She did not give him time to speak. "What did she show you?" Melanie said. A long pause. Then, in a very small voice, "She has the login alert, the back-end logs, hospital records, 17 confirmations." Another pause. "Tunde Adeyemi gave her the logs." The silence on Melanie's end was brief and absolute, the silence of a chess player watching a piece move that changes the entire board. "Did you give her anything?" she said. "I told her I would look into it," Mr. Balogun said. "I did not sign anything. I did not reinstate her." "Good," Melanie said. "Do not sign anything. Do not reinstate her. We have until Friday." Her voice was very controlled, the kind of controlled that requires active effort to maintain. "I am going to handle this. Melanie, if she takes this evidence to the board, she will not make it to the board," Melanie said. "Not if I have anything to do with it." She hung up. She looked through the glass wall of her office at the 3rd floor. At the empty desk by the window with the small cactus, she saw at Madame Asha Juma quietly typing in her corner, at the colleagues who had all looked away on Monday morning when they should have spoken up. She called Zuri. "We need to talk," she said when her cousin picked up. "Tonight, bring everything you have on Amaka Okeke. Everything." She straightened her silk blouse. She smoothed her hair. She looked at the empty desk by the window one more time and felt 3 years of careful strategy harden into something uglier and more personal than strategy had ever been. Then she smiled the smile that never reached her eyes and went back to work. What Melanie did not know was that Tunde Adeyemi was not done. At 4:15 that same Thursday afternoon, after the 3rd floor had emptied into its end-of-day rhythm, Tunde sat at his IT department desk and stared at his screen for a very long time. He thought about his mortgage. He thought about his rent. He thought about Amaka's face on Monday morning when every single person on the 3rd floor had looked away. Then he thought about the fact that he was an IT security professional who had discovered evidence of internal corporate fraud and had given that evidence to a suspended employee instead of reporting it through proper channels, which meant he was already involved. His mortgage was already at risk. The only question now was whether he was on the right side or the wrong side. He opened the internal IT security reporting system. He filed a formal flag. detailed, documented, time-stamped, reporting the discovery of a shadow account created from an HR terminal, the unauthorized deletion of client files, and a suspected internal security breach requiring immediate board-level review. He attached the back-end logs, he attached the access records, he attached everything. He filed it under urgent. He marked it for escalation to the CEO's office. Then he put on his headphones, turned his screen brightness all the way up, and went back to work with the focused energy of a man who had just done the right thing and was pretending very hard that he had not. The flag landed on Kofi Mensah's desk at 4:32 p.m. Kofi read it twice. Then he stood up, walked to Aid's office, knocked once, and opened the door. "Sir," he said, "you need to see this." Aid read the report without speaking. He read it the way he read everything, thoroughly, without expression. Nothing missed. When he finished, he put it down on his desk and looked at the window for a long moment. He thought about a woman in the lobby with 2 folders and a fraying blazer. He thought about, "I am having a very complicated week." He thought about, "I know," said in a voice that had come out before he had decided to say it. He thought about his mother sitting in a corner cubicle for 6 months, eating lunch alone and waiting for something exactly like this. He thought about a shadow account, a deleted file, a woman on suspension who had found the login alert herself in a routine notification email that everyone else had ignored for 6 weeks. He picked up the report. "Pull every HR access log for the past 6 months, he said to Kofi quietly. "Cross-reference with Balogun's administrator activity. See, I want a complete picture on my desk by 7 a.m. tomorrow." He paused. "And Kofi, this stays in this office. Nobody else." "Yes, sir," Kofi said. He nodded and left. Aid sat at his desk for a long time after the door closed. He thought about going down to the cafe. He thought about the fact that going down to the cafe was not something the CEO of Crown Continental Group did at 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon for no professional reason. He stayed at his desk. He picked up his phone. He opened a new message. He looked at the blank screen for a long time. He was not a man who did things without knowing why he was doing them. He had learned the hard way 2 years ago with Sasha what happened when you moved towards something that felt right before you had properly examined whether it was. That lesson had cost him more than he allowed people to see. But there was a woman in the cafe a few floors below him who had spent 48 hours building a case alone on suspension with nothing but an inbox and a printer, whose mother was in stage 3 cancer treatment, who had ended a 2-year relationship and gone straight back to work, who had knelt on a corridor floor in her only good blazer without hesitating for half a second. He typed a number from memory. He typed a message. He looked at it for a long time. He pressed send. Amaka visited her mother that evening at 6. She had not been planning to go. She had told herself she would go tomorrow, that she needed the evening to work, that she had too much to do. But at 5:30 she had closed her laptop and taken the bus to Lagos Island Hospital, because some things are stronger than to-do lists, and a mother in a hospital bed is one of them. Ngozi was awake and alert, sitting up with her reading glasses on the end of her nose, squinting at a large print magazine she had clearly obtained through methods that did not involve the hospital gift shop. A woman in the next bed was sleeping. The ward smelled like antiseptic and the particular warmth of a room where nurses had been working hard all day. "You were not supposed to come today," Ngozi said when she saw her. "I know," Amaka said, sitting down. Ngozi looked at her over the reading glasses. "Something happened." "Several things," Amaka said. "Good several things or bad several things." "Some of both," Amaka said. "Chidi is gone." Ngozi put the magazine down very deliberately. She took off her glasses. She looked at her daughter with the full, focused attention of a woman who had been waiting for this sentence for 3 months and had opinions she had been storing at considerable personal effort. "Good," she said simply. Amaka looked at her. "That is all you are going to say?" "What do you want me to say?" Ngozi said. "I told you about that boy's cologne 2 years ago, a man who wears that much cologne." is covering something, Amaka said. I know, Mum. Scientific fact, Ngozi said. She picked up her magazine, put it down again immediately. Are you all right? Yes, Amaka said, and was surprised to find it was true. Not completely, not without qualification, but in the essential way. The way that mattered. Yes, she was all right. I am actually all right. Ngozi studied her for a moment with the precision of a woman who had been reading that face for 28 years. Then something in her expression softened into the particular warmth of a mother who has been worried about something for a long time and has just been given permission to stop. And the job? I am fighting it, Amaka said. I have everything I need. I just need until Friday. Her mother nodded. She reached out and put the back of her hand against Amaka's cheek, the way she had done since Amaka was small and trying not to cry about something. Tell me something else, she said quietly. Something you are not telling me. Amaka looked at the window, at the Lagos evening going purple and gold outside the ward. She thought about a lobby and a left-side dimple and a drawer full of things she was not thinking about. Nothing, she said. Ngozi looked at her with the particular expression of a mother who knows everything and has decided to wait. She said. Mom. I said nothing, Ngozi said, picking up her magazine again with great dignity. I am just sitting here, reading. Amaka looked at her mother, at the reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, at the large print magazine held with the authority of a woman who had decided the conversation was over, at the hand that had sold gold earrings to pay for university applications, and felt something move through her chest that did not have a precise name. Just warmth. Just the specific, irreplaceable warmth of being known by someone who has known you since before you knew yourself. I will come Saturday, Amaka said, standing up. I will bring food. Ngozi lowered the magazine slightly. From that place on Bode Thomas, she said. The one with the correct pepper. The correct pepper, Amaka repeated. You know the one, Ngozi said serenely. She raised the magazine back up. The conversation, apparently, was concluded. Amaka smiled. She squeezed her mother's hand. She picked up her bag and walked out of the ward and took the bus home through the Lagos evening, not crying this time, just sitting with the window against her forehead watching the city go dark, thinking about Friday and what might be waiting on the other side of it. She did not know what was coming. She only knew something was. The way you know weather is changing before the sky shows you, something in the air. Something in the particular quality of the last few days, building toward a point she could not yet see. She got home at 8:30. She had barely taken off her shoes when her phone buzzed. An unknown number. A voice note. Something about the way it arrived. No greeting. No context. Just a file dropped into her phone like something thrown. Made her stomach tighten before she even pressed play. It was Zuri's voice. Smooth. Deliberate. Clearly recorded for purpose. I just think it is sad, you know, that she would use her mother's illness to get money from the company. Like the cancer diagnosis. I heard it is not even as serious as she is making it look. She is milking it, and now she is trying to seduce the CEO to cover up what she actually did to those files. Amaka stopped the voice note. She sat very still in her small apartment. The refrigerator hummed. The city outside did what cities do. She looked at her phone screen for a long time. She thought about her mother's hand against her cheek in the hospital ward 2 hours ago. She thought about the rice from that place on Bode Thomas, the one with the correct pepper. She thought about stage 3 and Dr. Mensa offering water and 350,000 naira a month, and a woman who had sold her gold earrings. They had used her mother. Out of everything they could have come for, her credentials, her evidence, her character, they had chosen her mother, a woman in a hospital bed with a large print magazine and reading glasses and a scientific theory about cologne. Amaka felt something move through her that was not grief, and was not anger, and was not fear. Something that lived underneath all three of those things. Older, quieter, considerably more dangerous. The specific feeling of a woman who has been patient for a very long time and has just reached the absolute last edge of it. She did not call anyone. She opened her laptop. She opened a new document. And she began to write. Not emotionally, not reactively, but with the cold, precise thoroughness of a woman who had spent 3 years learning exactly how Crown Continental Group documented things and was now going to use every single one of those skills against the people who had underestimated her. She wrote for 3 hours. When she finished, she had a formal complaint document, fully referenced with attachments, covering the ghost account. The fraudulent deletion, the targeted suspension, and the deliberate defamation of a family member's medical condition for the purpose of professional sabotage. She saved it. She did not send it. Not yet. She was saving it for Friday. She made tea. She drank it. She ironed her navy blazer and sat at her kitchen table and sewed the fraying cuff. Carefully, properly, with the small sewing kit her mother had given her when she first moved out that she had carried in her bag without using for 3 years. She held it up when she was done, ran her thumb along the cuff. Clean. No fraying. Good as new. She hung it behind the door where she would see it first thing in the morning. Then she went to bed. Her phone buzzed just as she was closing her eyes. She almost ignored it. She looked. An unknown number, not a voice note, a text. Miss Okeke, I hope I am not disturbing you. I wanted to check you were all right. She sat up. No name, no sign off, just those 2 sentences arriving in the dark of her apartment like something careful and considered. She looked at them for a long time. The tone was not the tone of a colleague. It was not the tone of someone performing concern. It had the particular quality of something said because it meant exactly what it said, and nothing more and nothing less. She typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots. A pause longer than a simple reply required. Then, someone who read a very thorough IT security flag this afternoon and wants you to know that what is in those 2 folders will not be ignored. Amaka sat in the dark and read the message twice. She felt something shift in her chest, not the lobby feeling, something different and quieter, something that had more to do with not being entirely alone in this than with anything else. She had spent 3 days building her case in the belief that she was fighting it completely on her own. The message did not change that. She was still fighting it herself, but knowing that someone on the 42nd floor had read Tunde's flag and was paying attention, that landed somewhere it had not expected to land. She typed, "How did you get this number?" A pause. Then, "Does it matter?" She looked at the ceiling. She looked at the navy blazer hanging behind the door with its newly sewn cuff. She looked at her formal complaint document saved on her laptop screen, fully referenced, devastating, waiting for Friday. She typed, "Good night, Mr. Juma." The reply came back immediately. "Good night, Miss Okeke. Friday is coming. Be ready." She put the phone face down on the nightstand. She closed her eyes. Outside, Lagos hummed and blazed in the dark. Indifferent, magnificent, enormous, full of its million simultaneous stories. She thought about Friday. Not what it held, because she did not know what it held, only that something was building toward it the way weather builds before a storm changes everything. She thought about an old woman in a corner cubicle who had told her tomorrow would be different. She thought about a man in a lobby who had known about her complicated week without being told and had not made it strange. She slept. Across the city on the 42nd floor, Aide put his phone down and looked at the ceiling of his office for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and called his mother. She picked up on the second ring. He could hear her television in the background. She watched the late news every night without fail, had done since before he could remember. "The IT security flag," he said. "You knew about all of this?" "I know about most things that happen on the 3rd floor," Madame Asha Juma said pleasantly. "How long have you been watching Melanie build this?" 6 weeks, she said. "I wanted to see how far she would go, and I wanted to see what Amaka would do when it landed on her." Aid was quiet for a moment. She found the login alert herself, he said, in a routine notification email. In 48 hours. On suspension. I know, Madame Asha Juma said. There was something in her voice she was not entirely hiding. And now they are going after her mother, he said. His voice was controlled, so underneath the control something considerably less patient was moving. Her mother, who has stage 3 cancer, that is what they chose to use. A silence on his mother's end. Aid, she said quietly. I want to end this now, he said. Tonight. I have the access logs. I can have Balogun's credentials revoked and Melanie suspended before 8 tomorrow morning. Aid. She should not have to spend another day. Aid. Her voice was gentle but absolute. The voice she used when she had made a decision that was not open for discussion. Listen to me. He stopped. If you move tonight, she said carefully, Melanie and Balogun face a quiet internal termination. They pack their things and they disappear, and 3 months from now they do exactly the same thing to someone else, somewhere else, because nothing was ever truly exposed. She paused. But if you wait until Friday, if you let me finish what I started 6 months ago, they will never do this to anyone again. Not in this company, not in any company, because what happens in that boardroom on Friday will follow them for the rest of their professional lives. The line was very quiet. And Amaka, he said. Amaka Okeke, his mother said, does not need you to rescue her tonight. She needs you to respect her enough to let her arrive at Friday standing. A pause. Which she will, because that is who she is. Aid sat at his desk for a long moment. He looked at the access log report. He looked at the Lagos skyline through his floor-to-ceiling windows, enormous and indifferent and blazing in the dark. He thought about a woman who had built a case in 48 hours on nothing but an inbox and a printer, who had gone to the 7th floor alone with 2 folders, who had come out of the elevator and nearly walked into him and had not flinched for a single second. Friday, he said finally. Friday, his mother confirmed. Trust me. He exhaled slowly. You have been right about people for 63 years, he said. 63 years and not once wrong, she agreed pleasantly. Get some sleep. A small pause. Then, warmly, deliberately. And Aid, the navy suit. Tomorrow. He looked at his wardrobe from across the room. I was not planning to wear the navy suit tomorrow. I know, Madame Asha Juma said. Wear it anyway. She hung up. Aid looked at his phone for a moment. Then, despite everything, the access logs, the anger, the voice note about a woman's cancer diagnosis being used as a weapon, the 350,000 naira a month, despite all of it, the left side dimple appeared briefly in the quiet of the 42nd floor. He went to bed. He did not sleep until midnight. Subscribe and hit the bell. Friday is almost here, and you have absolutely no idea what is about to walk into that boardroom.